Ever since I saw that elixir last week, I had a feeling it was either going to be a resurrection, sort of like take over a body potion, or was just going to be like, you will obey my every command. Though, the twist of, the very, very end of the episode, where we have our boy walk up to the throne and the words are said, I sacrifice yet again another son. Was not expecting that, did not see that one coming. I mean, there's definitely been rumblings in the community for Ranking of Kings about what if the father wasn't as good of a guy as he once was, what if there's been some shenanigans with the magic mirror for some time, what if that's the reason he was so powerful, and things are starting to line up in that way, but holy shit, I did not expect that. I mean, his character has been absolutely incredible. Daida has really become one of my personal favorites, and as long as they weren't going to make him willingly betray his own morals, I would be okay with whatever they did with him. And the kind of resurrection elixir has shook me, but I think is going to provide for some incredible content. Though, that is not what this main episode was about. That will definitely probably carry over into next week, but Boji and Kage and, Despa were an interesting trio. I had my feelings that maybe Despa would be a scam artist and wouldn't help Boji at all. I'm very happy to be proven wrong. The man is clearly weak himself. I mean, the brawl scene, or at least the aftermath, his face said it all. But I'm glad that despite taking their money and the life savings that, Kage kind of stole from Boji's castle, I'm glad that clearly progress is being made because we see a glimpse of something that rumbled. It kind of felt like a Pokemon use an earthquake. And then Kage sees in the distance as the door's closing a giant boulder that was cut. Now, my assumption was when he was picking out a weapon, it would be a dagger of some sort. Though I'm curious if it's going to be some form of magical enhanced weapon or something, because in this episode, they definitely make it crystal clear. Back when we saw the previous king, the king of the underworld, he mentioned about how it was a cursed giant. Basically, the power of the giant was ripped away from Boji. Once again, this episode from Despa, we get the same thing said, that no matter how hard he trains, his physical strength will never get better. That is cursed. But despite that, because he's already received his payment, he's not going to give up on the guy, there still is massive potential. So even without strength, there's probably ways to compensate, and the idea of maybe magical weapons or just really using speed, a very enhanced blade, something like that, it kind of makes sense that that could compensate for maybe a lack of physical strength, because we know Boji has insane speed. If he has a weapon that can kind of slice through rock without much struggle, you can really see how he could overcome the hurdle that has been bestowed upon him. I think it was really interesting and one of the funniest, if not the funniest moments of this anime to date, the cooking scene, because Boji wants to really show he can do things, and he can do quite a bit, despite not being able to carry a pail of water. He can only bring a little bit at a time, and he was cooking, he was leaving the shells on the eggs. I thought it was cute. When you saw the contraption that he made, the purple goo, this, you knew it was not good, but Boji seemingly loved it. And the fact that because he's a child of the giants, right? His stomach, essentially, they could eat a mountain, they could drink an entire lake. Their stomachs are pretty much immune to poison. So for him, he can eat whatever he makes, and it probably will taste great to him, despite being poisonous to the others. And the fact that you get this scene where they're kind of building it up, talking about, child of the giants, is something that, oh man, this is going to be really important. No, we just can't eat his cooking because his cooking will poison us, but it won't poison him because of his giant stomach. And I'm like, that is absolutely incredible. This is what makes Ranking of Kings so great, is that it constantly reveals things at a steady enough pace to explain why someone like Boji, we've seen his father, why would this kid who is small, frail, can't pick up a sword, be the son of this powerful being? And the fact that you're revealing these curses and these limitations, but still giving him potential, because if he had nothing that he could work with, there'd be no story. As wholesome as it would be to see this kid try, he needs something to set him apart, and the thing that they did early on was his speed and his determination to never give up. Even when he cries, when he looks at people, he pretends he's not, because he doesn't want to give up. And whenever he does try to give up, either Kage or even Despa in this episode refuse to let him go away because he is not a failure. And I think it's really interesting having a character who's deaf and, can't speak and just everything like that have further limitations than just those physical disabilities, but still being encouraged to continue on. I think it's a pretty powerful message. And Something that really caught my eye on the production side of this episode had to be the use of a few different instances of like a 3D camera and perspective in general. There were so many times where you'd have, the foreground, the central characters, them sitting at a table, and they'd pull away, and the way they distorted the background in space, it gave this a very eerie, but kind of like you knew something was going on in this episode, and they did it from the beginning all the way to the end, and I really liked the way they directed this episode. I might go as far as say it was one of my favorite directed episodes alongside favorite content all at the same time. I mean, I think the show gets better week by week, but it really is interesting how the production is really laying into what they can do with some techniques you don't usually see anime studios do. But I mean, even if you didn't catch in like the finer details, you could probably tell this episode felt differently directed than what you're typically used to if you watch enough seasonal anime, and I think Wit Studio is doing a hell of a job with this one. I mean, it'll be interesting for sure. I'm really curious to see exactly what weapon he did pick. I like the idea of him looking at like a sword, feeling mocked if he tried to use it. He's had that plenty of times, looking at something his father would have used, knowing he can't, so he goes for a miniature one, almost gets his neck cut off, but luckily, Despo's there to save the day. But I'm glad that, for someone who is so prideful, who thinks he's the most beautiful, the most powerful, and clearly he's not all as good as he thinks he is, I'm glad that he wasn't just a scam artist, because this is clearly the direction we need to go. Like, of course it was ominous, like the way they directed the door scene, but I think it's because, until he's ready, you can't see his progress. You can't see what's going on. And maybe they will shock us, and he's been doing some shady things. But as it stands for this episode, I'm glad that, despite taking all their money and being greedy with how much money he wanted, making them do the chores, ultimately Boji is clearly happy and making progress. And I mean, you saw in the episode the blisters and the fatigue that he was experiencing. It wasn't just because he was carrying pails of water, it's because he's day in and day out exhausted from training in his own way. I like that there's clearly book reading as well. It's not just like swinging a sword, because if you're stating in this episode he can't get physically stronger, then you need to do some other things than just, making him master his newfound weapon. I mean, every single week, it just feels more and more confirmed to me that this will be my anime of the year, and I mean, depending on how the next core goes as well, I mean, it will be fighting for that as well. It's just such a beautiful story. I heard the manga recently finished the first part of its story and is kicking off the second part, so maybe a handful of years down the line, maybe we'll be blessed with a season 2 of this. But I mean, 23 episodes feels to me like they're probably going to end what is essentially the first part of the story, and that'll be really cool to see where they're going to take it from here. But I love this show. Everyone who's been following the videos knows I love this show. It's passionate, it's full of quality, and seriously, they continue to do things I just really haven't seen in television anime before, and you'll love to see it. Let me know your thoughts, feelings, theories down below if you have any. Leave a like if you enjoyed, and subscribe if you're new around here. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.